Welcome. I'm here today with a stamp set from Technique Junkies. This is called Leaf Corner Sentiments Set of 3, and the item number is SS138. I will have this listed in the description box below my video. And if you order by September the 8th, you can save 15% off this stamp and all of the new stamp sets that are part of the new release for Technique Junkies. I also can offer you a 10% discount code on anything else that you order. My discount code is TJ10 Tracy. TJ10 TRACY. What I did first was used VersaFine ink and I heat embossed this with gold glitter embossing powder. It's a super pretty look. I stamped it once and I embossed it once. Now I'm going to use black. So I've got Midnight ink by Catherine Pooler, and I'm going to try to make it a frame. So I'm going to try to arrange the stamp so that both sides of the reef are touching each other and I have a nice square type frame. So as I clean this, I wanted to let you know that you can check out Technique Junkies for this stamp set, and if you click on the gallery, you'll see that there are so many different designs that were created by members of the Technique Junkies design team that'll give you some ideas as well. Now the sentiment can fit, one of the sentiments can fit inside the frame if you stamp it like this, which I think this looks really pretty. But the smaller sentiment, meaning it's not as wide, because each one of them has the same number of lines. But the first one that I'm stamping says, "In all things in nature, there is something of the marvelous." What a great sentiment. And then the other sentiment, which is a little bit wider, says, "Autumn shows us how beautiful it is to let things go." This one about nature, I think, can be used in so many different scenes. And of course, the one about autumn can be used in all type of fall scenes. I'm stamping the sentiment, "In all things in nature, there is something of the marvelous." And I kind of stamped it at an angle. And in the end, it ends up looking really cool on my card. Now, I'm using this black archival ink because I want to do some watercoloring of these leaves. Another option is to emboss after you do your black ink. You could use VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink and then sprinkle some black embossing powder on it and then do your watercoloring. So that's another option. I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process, but this time I'm going to widen my frame a little bit so that the leaves are not actually touching each other, but they're wide enough so that I can stamp that other sentiment inside, which is, "Autumn shows us how beautiful it is to let things go." Now, you certainly don't have to do both sides of the frame. You can just do one or the other and stamp your sentiment tucked in that frame part. The option is yours. I wanted to create a complete frame that had the corners on both sides, but it would be just as lovely just to maybe stamp it up in the left-hand corner and then stamp your sentiment underneath. As a matter of fact, if you look on that gallery I was telling you about, Pat, who is the owner of Technique Junkies, made a beautiful card. She took the leaf, which one? Pile of Leaves, which is a new stamp from Technique Junkies. And she heat embossed that with gold embossing powder. And then she also heat embossed the corner leaf corner, and did gold embossing powder. And then she did, it looked like watercoloring inside the embossed area. Okay, so I'm going to work on backgrounds. I grabbed the skeleton leaf stencil from A Colorful Life Designs, used pixie spray, and put it down on my paper. The colors of ink that I have selected are Mandarin Spice, Sauna, and Merlot, all from Catherine Pooler. If you know anything about my card making, I like bold colors. I just can't help it. So you'll see that I do use some pretty bright colors on this background. So the stencil is fantastic. It's one of my favorites and actually was one of the first stencils I ever used for a colorful life designs. You can purchase this at Technique Junkies, and if they're sold out, you can go grab it over at a Colorful Life Designs. I'll have linked to both of those in my description box. Now, for ink blending, some tips. Use a smooth paper. Hammermill Premium Color Copy Cover Paper. You can just get the 80 pound. It's called Hammermill Premium Color Copy Cover Paper. I'll have a link below in my description box for this paper. It also comes in 100 pound, whatever you think works for you. There's not much difference though when you get the 80 pound versus the 100 pound. The 100 pound is just slightly heavier. Now I'm taking those same ink colors. Now you'll see that I'm just using the same colors. I have Merlot, Mandarin Spice, and I'm just putting the stencil at an angle. My goal here is to get full coverage of this white panel. And you can do that by moving the stencil around and filling in basically where you see white. So you don't have to have your leaf like this, a symmetrical leaf. You can put it at an angle. You can, put multiple leaves on there like I did just previously, just so that you have coverage over that white space. That's something that you might want to consider. So now I'm going with just Mandarin Spice and Sauna. So I'm just doing a 2-color leaf. Now when you're ink blending, you have to go back in. So you lay your first color down and then you lay your second color down. And then it helps sometimes to go back in and blend with one of those brushes, sort of like the in-between area. Now there's a lot of white left over, so I'm just going to take my blending brush, whatever residual ink is left over as far as like the sauna color, and I am actually coloring in the sides of that and also the inside of the leaf that has a lot of white too. So whatever you prefer, really it's your preference. You don't have to do this. You can let it go. I'm just going in and using the colors that I originally blended with. By ink blending, I have 3 nice panels. Next comes the watercoloring. I am stamping those ink colors down on my silicone mat. Again, that's Merlot, Sauna, and Mandarin Spice. And I'm just taking a water brush pen, which is wet, and I am grabbing some of that ink. I'm also having a paper towel, just in case they are oversaturated. I try very hard to keep the watercolor in the lines. Now, one of the things that you could have done, like I said earlier, you could have embossed this, which I wasn't thinking I should have embossed it, and it helps you to stay in the lines. I also have a regular paintbrush that I use, so I've got the watercolor brush and a regular paintbrush. Actually 2 regular sized paintbrushes. Basically, I just have 3 different paintbrushes so that I can grab some of that. Now I am spraying the ink with water. That's helping to dilute it and make it into a watercolor, and that works out pretty good for me. I am going to fast forward past this section because it does take me some time to do this watercolor technique. The leaves are tiny and I take my time. You know me, I'm a slow crafter. And just for the sake of the length of the video, I just figured I would fast forward and show you what the result looks like. I was wondering why the video was so long. I forgot I spent so much time watercoloring. So this is what it looks like after I do my watercoloring. I think it's super pretty. Fall colors, just perfect for a fall card. And again, this sentiment says, autumn shows us how beautiful it is to let things go. And as I was looking at it, I thought, man, that's really stark white, that watercolor paper. So let's do some splotching. Let's just go ahead and use our paintbrush and grab some of that ink that we've already used, the same colors, and just splash some splotches on the white card base, which I think is super pretty. It just reminds me of fall leaves in the background. I have two cards that I'm making. The one that I just showed you, and then somehow I lost my footage of the frame where the leaves are touching and it says, "In all things in nature, there is something of the marvelous." I used a square die with rounded edges that are stitched for that background. I actually ink smooshed that background. And for the other one, I just used my decal trimmer. So that's sort of how I went about creating these. So you'll see here, these are the dynamics inside out stitched rounded square. And I also have some foam that I die cut, and I'm going to pop these up on foam. So this is just plain old fun foam, just what kids have. You can buy it anywhere, even at the dollar store. I have some gems that I'm going to place on these panels. Oh, and the background panel for the one on the left was also ink smooshed. I must have somehow lost my video footage of my ink smooshing. But what I did was leftover ink. I took my watercolor paper and just smooshed it in. So some of that Merlot, some of the sauna, some of the Mandarin spice was used to create the ink blending on the panel. So this little panel that I'm gluing down right now, if you take a close look at it, which you'll see it better at the end when my still photos come up, you'll see that's a watercolor technique, just an ink smooshed watercolor back. And of course the mat used the skeleton leaf stencil, and I'm adding a few gems. And this card is almost complete. The other card, the matte layer, I'm going to show you here in a moment. I ink smooshed Merlot, Mandarin Spice, and Sauna. And I came up with this real burgundy style background. And I think it was really pretty. I think it matched obviously perfectly with the inks that I used in my watercoloring because it is the same ink. And so that's one way that you can carry the color theme into your cards. Sometimes we just automatically reach for a white or a black background, but doing some watercolor ink smooshing is one way to do that. And I like the way that it just matches so well. And I'm just adding a few gems on this one too. Don't those ink splatters look great? I think they do. I think it really looks great, and it less stark white. Oh, and I used my decal trimmer to trim that little sentiment area. Again, this is the stamp that we use, Leaf Corner Sentiments set of 3, number SS138 from Technique Junkies. And finally, as I show you some still photo of the card that I made, I would ask that you please give this video a thumbs up and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about these techniques and about these cards that I created. If you're new to my channel, I'd like to say a special hello to you and ask that you please hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell so that you're notified of when I post my videos and do my lives. Yes, I do a live once a week, which is a live streaming broadcast, and I also do lots of giveaways, so I hope that you'll subscribe. Thanks everyone, and I appreciate all your comments and all your views. Have a hopeful day. Bye-bye.